Tales of the Jedi, I guess a new Star Wars series or micro series dropped on Disney Plus a few days ago when Riley and I got back from our trip to Texas. We watched last week's episode of Andor because we missed it when it came out last week because we were out of town. And after we watched Andor, we binged through all 6 episodes of Star Wars Tales of the Jedi. I think we briefly talked about it in our latest vlog. I'll link our channel below in the description section. So I've done a lot of Star Wars reviews over on GB Fang, but I've kind of reorganized the channels into the First Galactic Empire. No, I mean, I've just reorganized the channels into different themes. So GB Fang is now more political, whereas the main channel's more gaming, entertainment, which on occasion will include various TV shows and movies that I enjoy. But I have done reviews of all 9 episodes of Star Wars and some other Star Wars themed content in the Star Wars playlists if you're interested. So I'm going to give you my quick review of Tales of the Jedi and then maybe a little spoilers as well. Overall, I felt like that Tales of the Jedi was an interesting concept, and most of the writing was done by Dave Filoni. And I thought that he did an okay job. The animation, for the most part, is pretty good. You know, some parts could have been better, but I feel like that there was more potential here with Tales of the Jedi than what we ended up getting. And maybe it's the beginning of an entirely new series, but I feel like if they were to do more Tales of the Jedi, it'd probably be very similar to this format because each episode was pretty short. I think under 20 minutes an episode, and it also felt rushed at times as well. So basically there are 2 Jedis that are followed in this season, Ahsoka as well as Count Dooku. We'll talk about them in the spoilers section, but overall I thought it was okay. I definitely wouldn't mind checking out future episodes of Tales of the Jedi. I just feel like there is at least one episode that wasn't necessary, and there was some other stuff that was filler that could have been reorganized a little bit better, and I can't really say anything else until I go into the spoilers section. So I guess as a Star Wars fan, it was okay. It's not to the same level as Clone Wars, but I guess it was better than Obi-Wan Kenobi. By the way, your opinions about Tales of the Jedi, welcome below in the comment section. What did you like? What did you not like? Feel free and let me know. And all these episodes, by the way, except for one, was written by Dave Filoni. And the only one that wasn't was episode 3. That was written by Charles Murray and Elaine Murray. I guess there are a couple. It wasn't the worst thing, but at the same time, I really wish it would have been longer and fleshed out and wasn't rushed here and there. But I guess I'm just being spoiled by Andor, and I'll probably do a review of Andor after the final episode comes out, but thoroughly enjoying Andor. All right, so let's go into brief spoilers. I don't want this to be too long of a video because these episodes were short. They were bingeable within a 2-3 hour period, so that's a good thing. The other thing is they weren't dripped out over several weeks. They just put out all 6 episodes at one time, so props to Lucasfilm and Disney Plus for not dripping these extremely short episodes. The first episode is the worst episode. We didn't really need to see baby Ahsoka Tano riding around on a saber-toothed tiger. I just really didn't feel like it did anything. I feel like it kind of hurts Ahsoka's character because when she's first introduced in the Clone Wars movie, she's young and obviously she's got talent, but she has a lot to learn. She has a long ways to go. But by the end of Clone Wars, you know, most people love Ahsoka. I feel like Dave Filoni did a great job along with George Lucas and other writers in Clone Wars of crafting her character from that first movie all the way to the end of the Clone Wars, going into Rebels, and of course Mandalorian, Boba Fett, and now her own series coming sometime hopefully in 2023 or 2024. I would completely avoid the first episode of Tales of the Jedi. I realized what Filoni was wanting to do. He was wanting to have like a mother-daughter thing. Most people wouldn't take their 1-year-old child out hunting. Furthermore, why did the Sabretooth want baby Ahsoka and not the dead deer? The dead deer has way more meat on it. You think that an apex predator, which are also opportunists, like this saber-toothed tiger, would have grabbed the dead deer and hauled that off into the woods instead of this little baby. So episode 1 wasn't really necessary. All the other episodes, though, pretty good. You have Justice, Choices, Sith Lord. These make up a very interesting arc for Count Dooku back when he was a Jedi prior to Episode 1. And Sith Lord also happens during the events and right after the events of Episode 1 as well. And I really wish we would have gotten more time with Master Dooku as well as a younger Qui-Gon. I would have loved the entire first season to have been focused on younger Dooku and Qui-Gon throughout the years leading up to the events of Episode 1. And the finale revolved around what happens in Sith Lord, which is Episode 4, and just flesh it out a bit more. I like the fact that Dooku is actually trying to serve the people of the Republic, while you have these corrupt senators that are not exactly serving the people. He has two separate encounters with corrupt senators. First off in Episode 2, Justice, and then in Episode 3, Choices, where him and Mace Windu, they go off to find out about a dead Jedi Master. Upon further investigation, it appears that there's another corrupt senator, ends up being a problem. And so the Senate's guards killed the Jedi, and then they attempt to coerce the senator into doing what they tell him to do, but they're not really the bad guys, because this senator has basically sold out his planet for these companies to come in and have their way with the natural resources and the people of their world. So you have two back-to-back stories of terrible senators that have kind of shifted Dooku's opinions about the Republic and senators and the Jedi. So we do get some arc for Dooku being this Jedi master of Qui-Gon Jinn, to eventually his fall to the dark side, which I feel like we could have got much more of that in this series. Episode 4, Sith Lord. This is taking place about on par with Episode 1. At this point, he's already killed Sifo-Dyas. He already knows about Kamino, and he goes into the Jedi archives, hidden past the library in the Jedi Temple, and deletes Kamino. And some people are debating about, well, how could he do this without anyone else knowing about it? Obviously, the Jedi are very trusting of each other, and since he has made it to the rank of Jedi Knight, they trust him enough to go back there into the Jedi archives and not do anything like, I don't know, delete the entire planet from the archives. There's also an interaction between Dooku and his former apprentice, Qui-Gon Jinn, who was being voiced by Liam Neeson, by the way. His younger version was voiced by his own son, which is quite interesting. And they have this back and forth about how he was attacked on Tatooine by what he believes to be a Sith Lord. Yaddle happens to be there as well, and she's the one that looks similar to Yoda. They're part of the same mysterious species. She's voiced by Dallas Bryce Howard, and she's an okay actress, but this goes back to an issue that I talked about throughout the whole Bayonetta 3 saga, is that voice actresses and actors are very underrated. And they do a better job voicing characters on TV shows, movies, video games that are animated or CGI'd than live action counterparts. And this is another prime example. I think Dallas Bryce Howard did okay as Yaddle. It does suck that she doesn't talk the same way Yoda does. But bear in mind, Yoda's way older than Yaddle. And there's also this interview that I came across with Frank Oz. Some people have mentioned how the reason why Yoda talks that way is because his master talked the same way as well. So it is debatable about why Yoda and Yaddle talk differently. That's just the way it is. Just kind of have to accept it. So there's a small time jump where you have Dooku standing by the tree in the courtyard at the Jedi Temple. And this is shortly after Qui-Gon has been killed. Word has gotten back to Coruscant, and the Jedi are preparing to go to Naboo for the funeral of Qui-Gon Jinn. There's an interaction between Yaddle and Dooku is not going to go. By this point, I think he's become very delusioned with the Jedi Order, and he's actually working in secret with Palpatine. I don't know if he realizes that Darth Sidious is Palpatine, but he did help with Sifo-Dyas. He is helping with the clones on Kamino. He deleted the location of Kamino from the Jedi Archive. So he's obviously already in bed with Darth Sidious at this point. After his interaction with Yaddle, he goes out to the Foundry where Sidious likes to hang out throughout the events of the prequel trilogy, but he's followed by Yaddle. I guess Yaddle just sensed that there was something wrong with Dooku and felt like she had to follow him. Dooku confronts Sidious about the death of Qui-Gon Jinn, talking about how he could have been a powerful ally, and then Sidious comes back and says, well, I lost my apprentice as well. It's too late. We're already in this together, and there's going to be a lot more things that have to be done in order for us to bring order to the galaxy. Yaddle's eavesdropping on all this, and then she confronts both Dooku and Sidious, and Sidious is like, have I been betrayed? And Dooku responded no, because he had no idea that Yaddle was following him. Yaddle tries to convince Dooku to help her turn in Sidious to the Jedi Order, but a fight ensues between Dooku and Yaddle. Ultimately, Yaddle loses, and she gets killed by Dooku. She also claims how she agrees with Dooku's points of view about how the Jedi have lost their way, as well as the corruption in the Senate, and how she's stepped down from her position in the Jedi Council. But in Episode 1, she's clearly sitting in the background of the Jedi Council. So her decision to step down came rather quickly after Qui-Gon Jinn was killed. It's like Qui-Gon Jinn gets killed, and she's like, oh, I'm done. I'm done being on the Jedi Council. I quit. Once again, seems a little rushed. There's a lot of that happening throughout Tales of the Jedi. So ultimately, Yaddle gets killed by Dooku. I don't think that's how it originally happened in Legends. I think she actually dies saving a younger Anakin in between episodes 1 and 2. And I think in the comics, she actually does speak backwards like Yoda does. But that's all Legends now, so it doesn't count. Episode 5 and 6 focus on Ahsoka. She is a Padawan, and this is during the Clone Wars in the early days. And she's like doing this training against the training droids. She does a good job. You have all these Jedi show up hanging out for a training session. You have Plo Koon, you got Yoda, you got Anakin, you got Obi-Wan. And they're all just chilling. And isn't there a war on at the moment? Shouldn't y'all be out there in the galaxy with your clone troopers fighting on all these various planets and systems, not watching an apprentice fighting these remote droids? And shouldn't Ahsoka and Anakin also be out there along with Obi-Wan? But after this training session that she does quite well in, Anakin decides that it was too easy for her, that he wants to give her more of a challenge. And so this whole montage happens between the events of the Clone Wars and seasons of the series, I guess, where she is trying to deflect stun bolts from clone troopers. At first, she gets her ass handed to her. She keeps getting knocked out, but she doesn't give up, and you see a progression. I wish they had some sweet 80s music in the background for this scene, where eventually she gets better and better as she progresses throughout the events of the Clone Wars and gets older at deflecting the stun bolts, which ultimately serve her well at the end of Order 66, when her own troopers turn against her after the Siege of Mandalore, when she successfully captured Maul. I don't think any of this was necessary because she was already well trained. That was established throughout the arc of the Clone Wars itself. She was one of the main characters of the Clone Wars. And one thing I liked about the idea and concept of Tales of the Jedi is focus on other characters besides Ahsoka, Anakin, or Obi-Wan, like Dooku, or Qui-Gon, or Yaddle. It was a good episode, but I don't really feel like it was necessary. And then you have episode 6, Resolve, the finale. And this takes place at Padme's funeral. She shows up in secret. Belle's also there. Bail Organa, who is one of the original leaders of the rebellion. His daughter, Leia Organa, you may have heard of her. She's kind of important. Well, okay, he's Leia's adopted father. Anakin's obviously the real father. The point is, Belle has an interaction with Ahsoka, gives her a communicator, tells her if she ever wants to get back into the fight, because she's kind of done with the fight at this point, to just call him and he'll be there. A couple years pass by. Ahsoka's on a farm, and it's like a village, a small village of people. And I think one of them's like there's a father. I think there's a son and a daughter. I think the son and daughter are about the same age as Ahsoka. And they're putting hay on this machine. It falls over. It nearly crushes the daughter, but Ahsoka uses her powers to save the daughter. But that raises suspicion from the son, who is like really pro-Empire. So as Ahsoka and the daughter go off to sell some hay in a nearby village, the son decides to contact the Empire about there allegedly being a Jedi in their midst. Now, they don't know her real name. I think she's going by Ashla at the time. So this really cool Inquisitor shows up, and he destroys most of the village and only leaves the father and son alive long enough for Ahsoka to return with the daughter. And so they have this really epic interaction between, I think he's being called the sixth brother, and I think he was voiced by Clancy Brown. So that's pretty epic as well. There's a lot of really good voice acting in this 6-episode series. And like I mentioned, I think Dallas Bryce Howard did an okay job as Yaddle, but she's just not the same level as a voice actress, whereas, Clancy Brown is obviously a voice actor. And the same thing goes for Ashley Eccleston, who's great as Ahsoka, or Corey Burton as Dooku. But on the flip side, you had Ian McDermott come back as Sidious, and you had Liam Neeson come back as Episode 1 Qui-Gon Jinn, and they both did great. And you can't forget, D. Bradley Baker as Captain Rex, Jesse, and all the other clone troopers. So there's a confrontation between, I guess, Sixth Brother and Ahsoka. By the way, Ahsoka doesn't have her lightsabers, but Sixth Brother does have his, one of those double, spinny lightsabers. And this fight does not last very long, and she quickly dodges a few blows, and she takes the lightsaber, and then she decapitates the sixth brother, and his head deflates. I don't know why. Maybe it was just like a bodysuit, and maybe the Inquisitor, who was apparently a former Jedi, was not made of flesh and bone like the rest of us. But it was still a really cool concept and design for an Inquisitor, and voiced by Clancy Brown. That's pretty awesome as well. Wasted in one episode. It was a good episode, don't get me wrong, but I think what they could have done with the Ahsoka arc of Tales of the Jedi is show her life in more detail following the events of Clone Wars, in hiding, pretending to be a farmer, developing these friendships, these relationships with these farmers, like the daughter. Meanwhile, you had Sixth Brother out there hunting down Jedi and showing how intimidating he is. And I think the fight between Ahsoka and Sixth Brother should have lasted a little bit longer than it did. But Bail Organa shows up because she still has that communicator. She gets the father, the daughter, and the good-for-nothing son off the planet along with Ahsoka. And it's at this point, I believe, that she decides to get back into the fight and ultimately becomes Fulcrum in Star Wars Rebels. And this episode is apparently, according to Wikipedia, loosely based on the events of the 2016 novel Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston. And this has caused some controversy within the Star Wars community because it's not exactly accurate in the book compared to what happens in Episode 6, Resolve of Tales of the Jedi. But I think a lot of people that didn't read the book don't care. This is nothing new. The story group does a terrible job of dictating what's canon, what's not canon, and what they decide is canon now. Most of the time, it's the novels that end up suffering because of an episode or a movie or a TV series that goes and retcons something. It's just kind of pointless. And it's a shame that the expanded universe, aka Legends, got pushed to the wayside. But there has been some good content that has been coming out in this recent era of Star Wars. For example, Rogue One, as well as Mandalorian. Hopefully Ahsoka will be good. The Clone Wars, Bad Batch, and I'm absolutely loving Star Wars Andor. Tales of the Jedi was okay. I would say it's better than some of the other content that Lucasfilm has been putting out. Way better than the sequel trilogy or Obi-Wan. But I do feel like it was wasted potential because the focus should have been on Dooku and Qui-Gon. And if they're going to have some stuff about Ahsoka, then have it post Clone Wars. We didn't need her montage. We already know she's a badass Jedi. And we didn't need this whole first year of her life as baby Jesus Ahsoka that can somehow tame Sabretooth from having her for lunch. But overall, I thought Dave Filoni did an okay job, except for that one episode. But hopefully we'll get more Tales of the Jedi down the road, and maybe future seasons of Tales of Jedi will have longer episodes, fleshed out characters and arcs, because the first season of Clone Wars definitely wasn't the best, but same thing with Clone Wars, it got better of every season. So if they do intend on making this even a short season of only like 6 episodes, Hopefully the episodes will be longer, and maybe going forward, they'll be more fleshed out, and they'll learn a thing or two from Andor, and they'll focus more on, lesser known Jedi, and not one of the main Jedi that we've already had plenty of time with, and we'll have more time with, like Ahsoka, coming up in her own series, Ahsoka in the future, played by the lovely Rosario Dawson, which I'm very much looking forward to. I like Ahsoka, don't get me wrong, but there's plenty of other Jedis in the events of the prequel trilogy that I would also like to see them focus on with this series. So that's pretty much how I feel about Tales of the Jedi. It wasn't the best thing ever, but it was far from the worst when it comes to Disney Plus Star Wars content. Now I want to know what you thought about Tales of the Jedi. What'd you like? What'd you dislike? What do you think they could have done better? What do you think they should do if they decide to do future seasons? As always, welcome below in the comments section.